Are narcissists monsters? And what does it do to us when we look at another human being and say, that's the narcissist, that's the monster? My name's Ruth Ann. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm an expert in relationships and issues of narcissism. And in this video, I want to talk about some of the dangers of identifying and labeling someone else as a narcissist. Now, I work with people who would call themselves narcissists. And I also work with people who've been deeply hurt or even abused in relationships with someone who was probably quite narcissistic. And in that latter situation, identifying this other person as a narcissist is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can be a helpful framework within which to make sense of their behavior, particularly if you take the time to really understand what pathological narcissism is, how it affects people, how it affects relationships, and what your response was to this other person in the relationship you had with them. On the other hand, it's a very one-dimensional label and it's a very narrow story, and it almost certainly doesn't do justice to the nature of the relationship you had with this other person or to who they were. If we understand narcissist as simply meaning the monster, we cut ourselves off from this person's story, their history, the shades of grey, the contradictions in the behavior and the relationship, the things that we liked about them, as well as the ways in which they hurt us. And to do that risks dehumanizing them, and it also risks dehumanizing ourselves, because we stop being able to make sense of them as a human being. We stop being able to have empathy. And I don't mean sympathy, agreement, or acceptance. I mean, understanding the whole of their humanity, the whole of their personhood, and the whole of the relationship, which was almost certainly riddled with contradictions and shades of grey. Now, we aren't really defined by our maddest, baddest edges. All of us have light and shadow within us. But it's easy to want to see the world in black and white, to have a simple explanation. But I don't think that really does justice to our stories. And there's a real danger that you can shift from being in the thrall of a love-bombing narcissist who's really impressive, trying to win your admiration and your affection and all of the excitement and the pleasure that often goes with that, to being in the thrall of a narcissist who you hate, who you despise, who you see as irredeemably evil, bad, and monstrous. Either way, you're absolutely obsessed with this other person and seeing them in a very one-dimensional way. And all that attention on the other person can be a subtle form of self-neglect. If you have been through a very hurtful or abusive relationship, then you probably have a lot of loss to grieve. You may have to grieve years of false hope and all of the things that you poured into that relationship and sacrificed for that relationship. You may also have to wrestle with the impact it's had on your self-esteem, on your ability to trust in other people, and perhaps also in yourself. You may need to process the impact that that relationship has had on how you see yourself, how you relate to other people, how you engage with the world around you. And to get in touch with that can be overwhelming. It can be painful. Friedrich Nietzsche has a wonderful quotation, which is that he who fights monsters must see to it that in the process he does not himself become a monster. And I think that's very apt here, because when we adopt this kind of one-dimensional story and we cut off our empathy and our humanity and our ability to connect and relate to ourselves, that really risks dehumanizing us. Now, I am not suggesting that you take this empathy or this nuanced understanding of the other person and use it to drive you to forgive them, to restore the relationship, to stay in a relationship, if you have evaluated and decided quite rightly that this relationship on balance is not a good relationship for you to be in. And if it's a dangerous relationship to be in, of course you must keep yourself safe. But a willingness to see complexity in the other person and in ourselves can help us to be more forgiving and more accepting, not of bad behavior, but of our own humanity, our own weaknesses, our own vulnerabilities, our own light and our own shadows. It also allows us to be more open to our own pain and suffering and really process and grieve all of the losses that you've experienced in that relationship. It takes a lot of courage to turn our attention away from the narcissist, to stop fighting monsters and start wrestling the demons within. However, if you can find the courage to do that, I think it can really open up a pathway to making peace with yourself, learning how to trust yourself, learning how to strengthen your boundaries, or to be more open and vulnerable, depending on what you need. I'd love to hear your reaction to this video, so please do leave a comment, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me. I look forward to seeing you next time, and in the meantime, take good care.